Hi, everyone. I'm Parag Mehta, and I have the privilege to serve as Executive Director of the Center for Inclusive Growth, which is the philanthropic arm of Mastercard. We are so pleased to be hosting this event alongside the Social Policy Institute at Washington University. This is the third chapter in our series on inclusive growth in St. Louis, and we are so glad all of you have joined us today for what will be a terrific conversation. The topic of the future of work has occupied a lot of time and energy in boardrooms and classrooms, in the hallways of nonprofits, and in the halls of government. At Mastercard, we are very clear that our focus is on the future of workers, not just work. We are committed to advancing people-centric, tech-enabled approaches to help smooth the transition to the digital economy. And that begins with collaboration across sectors to develop actionable insights which will help us better prepare for that future. We believe that the benefits of a digital economy should extend to everyone, everywhere. And we are committed to marshaling all of Mastercard's assets, its people, its data, its technology, and its philanthropic capital in support of St. Louis, our second home. We must put technology to work for people so that its impact doesn't end up working against people. In so doing, we can build a more equitable, a more sustainable, and a more just economy. That is our commitment. It's why we partnered with the Social Policy Institute on this series, to not only start a conversation, but to bring together policymakers, community leaders, private sector employers, and of course, the voices of workers. Together, we will build partnerships and identify solutions that will transform St. Louis into a more inclusive community, one where prosperity is shared by all. Each event in this series is designed to amplify the voices and efforts of people in St. Louis who are on the front lines, already doing the hard work of getting us where we need to be. And you will hear from some of them today. We want to ignite conversations about both the opportunities and the challenges of economic growth in St. Louis. Now, while these events are hosted by the Social Policy Institute and the Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth, they are powered by a passionate community advisory committee. And in the chat, you'll see the committee's theory of the case for this series, and you'll also learn how you can be a part of this collaboration to create a more inclusive St. Louis. We could not do these events without the incredible support of these St. Louis residents leading the efforts. We are grateful for their commitment to the series and to their community. And now I'd like to introduce one of those fantastic advisory committee members. Christy Klein Davis is the Chief Strategy Officer at the Missouri Foundation for Health. Christy will take it from here and introduce you to our speakers. I hope you enjoy the conversation, and over to you, Christy.
Thank you, Parag. So today's event, Creating Inclusive Access to Education, Training, and Technology, takes place over 2 days, today and again tomorrow. During this time, we'll hear ideas from local and national speakers about how to create inclusive access to education, training, and technology. We know there are high-quality jobs emerging. And we also know that we currently have gaps in representation for those jobs among women, people of color, and people with disabilities. History will tell us that if we're not explicit in our attempts to close those gaps, we will not be successful in creating the inclusive economy that we desire. To do so, we'll need to collaborate, we'll need to show humility, a willingness to change, and an openness to learn, which is why we're here today and again tomorrow. So on day one, we'll get the lay of the land. We'll learn what's happening nationally and here at home as it relates to this inclusive workforce. Then I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, to talk about emerging solutions for our city and how we're all able to plug into those. It's my pleasure to introduce Marcela Escobari, Senior Fellow at the Center for Sustainable Development at the Brookings Institute. Marcela and her team recently launched the Mobility Pathways tool for workers, employers, and policymakers to help address the issues and barriers we're discussing today. Marcela will present a national and local perspective about workforce and will answer questions like, what is a high quality job? Who's left out of these jobs? And what does that mean for St. Louis? Once Marcela completes her presentation, Brian Phillips, Executive Director of the Washington University Medical Center Redevelopment Corporation, will join our conversation as a moderator. He'll ask 1 or 2 questions from the audience to Marcela, and then introduce our next set of speakers, who represent 3 St. Louis organizations that are working to create access to opportunities for youth, adults, and those with disabilities. So now it's my pleasure to pass it over to Marcela Escobari.
Thank you, Christy. It's great to be with you. We actually had a case study on St. Louis in one of our early reports, hoping to be invited to St. Louis. But I guess being February and all, I guess, Zoom is not that bad. But anyway, I'm going to try to share my screen. Get us started. And I need some sense. One second on whether this is working. Can somebody give me a sense that you can see slides?
It's working, Marcela.
Perfect, perfect. Well, I hope to share with you a bit of the state of the workforce and why this topic of this panel today for inclusive access to training and opportunity is particularly important now. And we'll share some tools and new research on economic mobility of who's getting stuck where. And to be honest, our hope is that this data can be valuable to the organizations like those in this panel who are actually doing the hard work on the ground. So this is the challenge of the day, right? We have 10 million workers almost that have lost their jobs since in the last 9 months. And the recovery has slowed down, right? We've added less than 250,000 jobs since since October. And the US has a particularly poor record in helping workers transition when they lose their jobs or as the economy evolves and requires different skills. So this dramatic unemployment of today is conflated with two other trends in the labor market that were here, way before the crisis. One is, let me see if this works. One is the basically pervasiveness of low-wage work and the precariousness of that work. So even before this crisis, we measured that we had around 53 million Americans that made less than $16 an hour on average, and that was 44% of the workforce. And low-wage workers vary city by city, making up anywhere from 30% of the workforce to 62% of the workforce. In St. Louis, that number is actually 37%, which is not, on the lower part of the spectrum, but still means that, over 1/3 of the workforce is low wage. And those workers in the lowest quintile of the wage distribution are the ones that tend to cycle from job to job the most without seeing wage growth or progression in their careers. And the second trend is what you see in this slide, which is people dropping out of the workforce. We are at some of the lowest labor participation rates in history, particularly for men. 1 out of 4 men without a high school degree are out of the workforce. And this has worsened in the pandemic. It has lowered by 2%. We're at 61.5% of labor force participation, which is where we were in the 70s. So now the forces behind these trends of wage stagnation and this kind of barbellization, as David Otter talks about this, of the labor force, where between low wage jobs and high wage jobs and the erosion of middle class jobs, has been at play for the last 50 years. And automation, digitization, the rise of contract work, all have accelerated with this crisis, right? So digital skills, for example, which I know Dana will talk about, are a growing part of every job, both low and high skill jobs. And yet the labor force is not ready for these changes, right? So in the same period, we have seen our investment in helping people upgrade their skills or transition to better jobs have dwindled, right, in the same period. We spend 1/4 of what we spent in the 1970s and a fraction of what OECD countries spend on training. And the result is this kind of new finding that we have is that we have the largest gap in the last 20 years of the jobs that are growing, not being able to easily absorb the jobs that are shrinking. So we know the low wage, the crisis, the pandemic has been a double whammy for low wage workers that tend to cluster in hospitality and face-to-face industries, right? So in the last 9 months, we have seen a sharp contraction of low wage work. And we think that many of these jobs may disappear altogether. So the jobs here in red are low wage jobs, are the ones that are shrinking the most, right? Retail, food prep, preschool teachers. These jobs also have the lowest ability to be absorbed by the growing occupations. Because some jobs are growing, particularly in digitally heavy occupations. But our transition data suggests that today's hardest hit occupations, from waiters to bartenders to teachers, have not historically offered pathways to the jobs that have been added in recent months. So this mismatch suggests that many of today's unemployed workers may find it harder than in the past to find new jobs and advance through their careers. So what does this look like for St. Louis, right? So this in this graph, the gray bars show the growth or decline of jobs in the last 15 years, from 2004 to 2019, and the blue dots represent the earnings of the average worker in 2004, and the orange dots show the earnings in 2019. Right, so as you can see, most of the job growth has been in low-wage occupations, right, like hospitality and a bit in healthcare, which is smack in the middle. But in both of these, like 2019 wages were only marginally higher than they were, 15 years prior. So these are also the industries in St. Louis that have the highest percentage of vulnerable workers. And what we define as vulnerable workers are those that not only make less than the median wage, but also don't have employer-provided insurance. And and these are also some of the jobs that have been hit the hardest. This is basically what's been happening to job growth in St. Louis in the last 9 months, right? So some of the sectors that are unlikely to recover in the future are sectors like hospitality. And actually healthcare has fared better in St. Louis than in the rest of the economy that has seen kind of a shrinking of around 5%, but in St. Louis it's been just around 1%. So how can we help these dislocated workers find the next job? And more so given that their old job may not be available anymore, right? If you are a retail worker at Gap, you can't easily get a job at J. Crew. So we've tried to show what are some well-trodden paths by other retail workers that have delivered upward mobility for workers, right? So we looked at 250,000 job-to-job transitions and have created paths into and out of more than 440 different occupations. So workers may be able to look at opportunities that they may not have considered. And also we hope that firms may look at workers that they may not have considered in some in-demand jobs by looking at these well-trodden paths. So in this example, in this tool that we recently launched, as Christy mentioned, and is available online, we can see the paths out of a retail worker and what are the common transitions. And we can tell which of them provide higher salaries, but also which ones provide higher mobility, which is a new metric that's supposed to show which ones will actually mean upward mobility in the next 5 years. So we see here that stock clerks are growing, which is not surprising. Amazon is growing, we're ordering everything online, and that offers also a pay raise. But you can even drill down further to understand, okay, what might be the job prospects in St. Louis? So this is the same transition data in St. Louis to say that, not only stock clerks are growing, but in St. Louis, actually cashiers and customer service representatives might provide opportunities. And the little arrow on the left shows whether job postings have been growing in the last quarter, just to say what's happening locally to these jobs. So we hope that this can help workers navigate, careers, but also displacement, but also that it can help firms be more expansive in their candidate pools, right? So this is looking on the other side to say, imagine I'm a firm that is looking to hire system administrators or system analysts, right? A growing job. And it is not surprising that computer scientists tend to transition into this job. But what might be less intuitive is that printer repair people who lost their jobs because nobody's going to the office also tend, and with a bit of training, might be able to become successful network administrators and system analysts. So the idea is that, it's hard to see a silver lining in this crisis, but because of this dislocation and the fact that folks will be looking for jobs outside of what they used to do, it's an opportunity in those few jobs that are growing to really offer and help people make that transition. So our research also reveals, and this is something that I wanted to share that we haven't published yet, that these paths upwards aren't equally accessible across race and gender. And of course, this is something that probably our panelists see day to day. But this graph shows the gap in mobility across all industrial sectors. So in certain sectors, such as manufacturing, the difference in the rate of upward mobility between Black and white workers is as high as 14 percentage points. So this means that a worker that starts in manufacturing, when they switch occupations, the chances that they will move to a new job that represents an upward transition is 14 points higher if you're white than if you're Black. And the gap is even higher for Hispanic workers at 18%. And you see smaller gaps in government and education. Now, of course, there are many confounding factors to these numbers. The most obvious is education. But even when we account for education, the gaps persist. So we hope that this can be a mirror for certain industries to understand, how does my company fare compared to others in the industry, and why am I seeing those gaps in mobility? And we're also hoping to go even deeper at the occupation level. This is the last example I wanted to show, so that when we look at the common pathways for workers that help them get out of low-wage work, a good example is in the healthcare sector are licensed practical nurses, right? LPNs, and even registered nurses, which triple your salary from being both a health aide or a personal care aide, which make usually $12 or $13 an hour. So this is as you've all heard, a growing occupation by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But if you're a licensed practical nurse and you're Black, you are half as likely to transition to registered nurses. Right, so when Black LPNs switch jobs, 18% go to registered nurses, but 45% go back to health aides, which is more or less halving their salaries. So it's not surprising that while workers of color account for 50% of lower paying home health and personal care aide jobs, they represent only 37% of LPN jobs and 18% of registered nurses. So, we see these bottlenecks in other gateway occupations, such as who becomes an accountant or an auditor from being a tax preparer in some tech jobs. And we're hoping that finding these bottlenecks are a first step to unlocking them. So to conclude, we know that accessing reskilling is one of the ways in which workers can move up. And it is key to understanding, and it's key to understand all the barriers that that workers go through in trying to reskill, particularly if you're a low-wage worker, right? So this user journey that we developed was just trying to quantify a bit that experience from the perspective of these workers, those who are trapped in low-wage work, where if they have kids to attend to, if they have a second job to help, make ends meet, if they have reticence of going back to the classroom, how is it that programs can meet them where they are so that they can successfully enter in this reskilling journey as part of their mobility, which I think is what our panelists are doing on the ground and trying to understand and unlock these barriers. So with that, let me stop sharing my screen, and I hope I bombarded you with lots of data for our discussion.
Thank you again for that really great information, Marcela. I want to take a quick moment to pause and ask everyone in the audience to reflect on what Marcela shared. After listening to Marcela's presentation, what do you think is the biggest challenge for an inclusive St. Louis workforce? We'll share your answers on the screen shortly. But while you do that, I want to give Marcela an opportunity to answer a couple of the great questions that we've gotten in the chat. And so I'll start off with one of the first questions that I've seen. So where do early childhood education, childcare, pre-K services fall in these employment categories? Are these jobs rolled into education or another category?
Okay, I thought, the preschool teachers are some of the jobs that we saw where some of the childcare jobs are in. We have seen a actually pretty big contraction at the beginning of the pandemic of those jobs. There were 400,000 less preschool teachers in the last 8 months. So it's a catch-22, right? They are losing their jobs, and yet it is one of the biggest barriers in helping people go back into work.
Okay. Another question I'm really interested in, being who my employer is. You said that healthcare is shrinking. It seems like that would be something that's growing. So what's going on there? Yeah,
so healthcare is growing. So healthcare is one, as you saw in St. Louis, it's the sector that has grown the most. Even it has grown the most in every city, but it has grown in St. Louis the most in the last 15 years. And it's predicted, healthcare in general, but many of these low-wage occupations that we talked about, to also accelerate 30% in the next 10 years. So what I was saying is, when you think about the jobs that have contracted in every sector, because everything has contracted, right? And then some jobs have rebounded, and some have stayed below what they were a year ago, right? So the graph that I showed for St. Louis showed that, not surprisingly, hospitality had a huge contraction, and then it went up, but it's still at 75% of what it was. Healthcare for St. Louis, it's at 99% of what it was a year ago. Well, we would have expected growth on that number, right? So 99% sounds like we're back to normal, but we're really not back to normal. But for St. Louis, that 99% is still higher than their peers, because nationally we have seen probably a 4 to 5% decrease now. So that is just talking about this unique pandemic 9-month contraction. So yeah, you're absolutely right. As you know, that healthcare is growing and will continue to grow.
And quickly, before we share some other responses, have we mapped these pathways against high growth jobs, sectors, industries in St. Louis?
So the gateway jobs and trying to find these bottlenecks. So the research that we're doing now, and again, we've shown some that we haven't published yet, is trying to understand nationally kind of where these clusters of low wage jobs exist, in which occupations, and which occupations are ways out from this kind of churn. All of that information is at the national level, because if we broke it enough, if we broke it at the city level, we wouldn't have enough information. But we don't think that is something that changes that dramatically by place. That the kind of bottlenecks of why not enough registered nurses are people of color are some of the barriers that exist across the country.
Thank you, Marcella. And shortly on your screen, you're going to see some of the responses to our questions early of what did you think the biggest challenge for inclusive growth in St. Louis workforce. And so let's see. So, that we only do one side, affordability and upskilling, sorry, childcare workforce, fragility, early childcare. And so we have some really good responses here. So, we'll discuss these ideas even more with some of our next speakers and as well as with our panel tomorrow. I'd like to now introduce our first presenter, Dana Loreberg, former Executive Vice President of Technology of Mastercard Operations and Technology in St. Louis. Dana will share a little bit about Mastercard's Girls for Tech program and the importance of engaging young people, especially girls with STEM opportunities to set them up for future high-quality careers. Dana?
Well, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be with everybody today. And I would like to tell you a short story in my time here. It's about the past, the present, and the future. Might sound very similar to Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I think I've sort of missed the holiday season a little bit here, but it's still relevant for us here today. So bear with me. So first, I think I'd like to talk to you about my past. I am a girl geek. I am so lucky that when I was in high school, I saw a computer for the first time. And that probably sounds crazy because computers are all around us now, everywhere, but not when I was growing up. And I saw this computer, it was wheeled into my high school. And at that moment, I knew that I could solve big problems using a computer. And I feel really lucky that I had that epiphany and was exposed at that time at such a young age. I went on to pursue a degree, an engineering degree. I became a software engineer, and I have had and enjoyed a long and successful career in technology. I ran Mastercard's global payments network and all of our mass market assets that have to be perfect all the time, that enable everybody to have access to their funds and enjoy commerce seamlessly. So that's what I did, and I'm just a girl from North St. Louis County. So I feel incredibly lucky with my own past. And let me shift to our community's past. There's no doubt we've been constrained in St. Louis. The core of St. Louis has talent that has really been untapped, that has been constrained by lack of access, by lack of education and people and training, and people have not been able to really unlock their own potential and to enjoy the success that they could have. And I really think that the advancement of technology and the COVID has really shined a light on this. The gap is widening. It's not narrowing, it's widening. Let me fast forward now to the future and spend a few minutes talking about the future. There, even today, are more tech jobs available than there are workers to fill them. People qualified for these jobs. LinkedIn says there's 700,000 jobs right now that are open, that there are not people with the skills to apply for these and to be able to take on these jobs. And if I really take a pause and look at a broad future, the future of our workforce is bleak, particularly as it relates to girls. If you think about technology jobs, STEM is very important. Math and science and these kinds of skills and education are incredibly important to be able to enjoy a career in STEM. But girls, as young as middle school age, so between age 8 and 12, girls are dropping out of the STEM curriculum at a rate of 4 times more than boys. And technology, as I said, is so important. It's not just that they're not going to have an opportunity to have a technology job. They're going to struggle in the workforce because all jobs are technology jobs these days, and that's only going to increase. So Mastercard looked at this problem, feeling a responsibility as a technology company, and as a technology company that's global, but really considers St. Louis to be a hometown, our hometown. This is one of our original places where we started, which I started at long ago. So we created a program oriented for girls to, educate them about STEM and about technology. It's called Girls for Tech. You can see it in my background here. And it is a program that I'm very excited about because it teaches girls skills that they don't even know they have. We go through a series of 6 different really fun exercises, little stations that they go through that teaches them things like artificial intelligence, like big data, like cybersecurity, algorithms. And they recognize through these fun experiences that they actually have skills in tech. They have analytical skills, they have pattern detection skills, they have analysis skills, they have forensics, kind of investigative skills. And these are all skills that are necessary in a technology field and in technology roles. And it's very exciting to be able to be with these girls as they walk in thinking, oh, I'm not a tech person, I'm not a pro coder, that's for boys, I'm not capable. And they go through these exercises and they come out saying, I can be a fraud detective, I can be a cybersecurity engineer, I can be a big data scientist. And it's so exciting. So Mastercard has already reached the lives of 1 million girls around the globe. And we have a goal to reach 5 million girls by the year 2025. So that's really being able to show these girls the different kinds of jobs there are in technology, the different kinds of skills that there are in technology, and keep their interests in these kind of fields so that they will stay in math and science. But I'd also tell you another point that I want to make is that I think it's incredibly important for girls to have role models and to have mentors and to be able to see that they can do it as well. We like to say you can't be what you can't see. And it's really important for all these girls and really kids in general to be able to see people that look like them, that have some similar background to them, that have some interest that they share, something to connect these girls and these kids with people in these different jobs so that they can see they can do it too. So that's really something that's important to Mastercard, and it's important to our community. It's important to me as a hometown St. Louis girl in tech. So let me shift now again to the ghost of Christmas present, if I can, and talk about the workforce of today. The workforce of the now. We talked about the workforce of the future with the girls, but just let me spend just a second on the workforce of the now. There's a lot of people in St. Louis that are undiscovered talent, that have amazing skills. There's the next Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg or, Steve Jobs, you name it. These people are around us and they're undiscovered talent. And St. Louis is just on the cusp of great change. So I want to encourage us all today together in this event that SPI is putting on with Mastercard. We can't admire the problem. We have to make change ourselves. So I want to put a call to action out there for us all. Corporations, the corporations, local corporations, we have an amazing set of corporations in St. Louis that are very unique. If you guys haven't looked at the St. Louis Jobs 2030 analysis that Bruce Katz and Mark Wrighton and a series of people have put together, please do so. I know Jason Hall at the end of this we'll talk about it a little bit. St. Louis has amazing corporations. My call to action for you is really look to also develop programs such as these Girls for Tech so that we can educate our girls and educate our children, but also for people today, use programs such as Launch Code, which we'll talk about later, which is a reskilling of our talent in St. Louis, of adults that are in the workforce today to be software engineers. There's a company called NPower, which educates and reskills workers to be data center engineers, operations engineers. Please use these organizations and their counterparts and peers to help to reskill our St. Louis community and to employ them. Make a commitment to employ people sourced from these pipelines. And also, please put your women, put your diverse talent out there to be role models. There's a lot of priceless women at Mastercard that can be out and talking with folks in the community. Please do likewise. Universities, academia, please examine your curriculum. Make sure you work with corporations in the secular world and understand what the skills are that are necessary. And really make sure your curriculum is fresh and sharp. By example, Mastercard and WashU partnered where we looked at cybersecurity skills and we helped to elevate curriculum. We helped to, WashU helped to educate our employees even further on cybersecurity skills. These kinds of programs to make sure that your curriculum is really fresh and relevant and can be accessible to the community. Nonprofits, please, like Launch Code and like NPower, please continue to scale these programs, continue to get more and more people and make it more and more accessible to our community. And governments, please help us financially to give grants to be able to accelerate these programs and to get scale into our community. And everybody, please put your role models out there. Please put our girls through programs such as Girls Inc., who can have role models, and please do the Girls for Tech-like programs. Because at the end of the day, as Charles Dickens said, when Scrooge woke up, it is still Christmas Day. Today is Christmas morning, and today we can make a change for our future, and we can reach our hand out to the next person and bring them up to the table so that we can pay it forward and so that we can make our St. Louis community thriving and so that our children and so that the workforce of today can really be employed in these important roles in these tech fields that are really so much in demand. And with that closing, I just thank you for your time. And I encourage you all to think about the call to action that I have for you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Dana. I think we have time for a couple of questions. And if I heard you correctly, you stated that, you some really intense disparities between boys and girls in STEM programs. If I heard you correctly, you said that girls drop out 4 times the rate that boys do. Yeah. Do we know why that is? And is there something that we can do specifically to address that? To start to bridge that gap. I know you talked about a lot of the great programs and trying to get our today's workers up with Launch Code and things of that nature, but could you just take a few seconds to dive a little bit deeper into why that disparity exists?
I really wish I could put my finger on the pulse of exactly why girls are dropping out. I've talked to a lot of girls. We've done a lot of studies. Mastercard actually did a research paper on this topic. And there's a couple of theories, things that I believe in. I believe, as I talk to boys and girls of that age, generally speaking, I feel like boys are just in their mindset, they want to be CEO and make a lot of money, and girls want to help people in life. I'm generalizing for sure, but I feel like it's difficult for girls who are motivated by things that they want to help people in the world to see how does technology help people in the world. So I think it's important to make a connection, to connect that dot. Technology helps people at scale. I think girls understand how teachers help people in the world, how nursing can help people in the world, these kinds of professions. There's nothing wrong with those professions, but I think technology is hard for them to understand. How does that help people in the world? So I think that's one reason. I think they also don't have enough. I mentioned role models. They don't see a women in roles that they want to be, that they could be. They don't have as much exposure to people that look like them, that have similar interests to them, that they can have some connection with. So that's one of the reasons why I'm really passionate about role modeling and getting out in the community. I'm available to all you people to talk to girls and talk to people, as are a lot of women at Mastercard and women of color and of Latin American descent and et cetera. I think it's really important for them to see that. But those are a couple of reasons. I wish I knew the answer for sure, but somehow coding and technology has become some sort of a boy thing, and we really just have to dispel that myth through hard work of letting girls see that they can do it.
I want to make sure that we stay on time, but we have a couple of other questions in the question and answer section that we'll try to get answered through writing. But thank you so much. I mean, this is really an interesting topic, and it's something that we all need to work on as a region. And so I'm going to go on to our next presenter, Mr. Sal Martinez, CEO of the Employment Connection, who will share a little bit about how their program helps people overcome employment barriers through training, placement, and other services. Sal, you want to take it away?
Thank you very much, Brian, and good afternoon to everyone. And I want to thank Sarah for assisting me with the slideshow. As Brian said, I am CEO of Employment Connection. We've been serving the St. Louis region now for over 40 years. And what you see here are kind of the foundational pieces of our organization to empower, employ, and inspire. Over 90% of our clients that we assist have significant barriers to their success, to their ability to move up the social mobility ladder. And we pride ourselves on never turning anyone away who seeks our assistance. Sarah, we can go to the next slide. So who do we serve? We serve the most vulnerable in our community, those that live in communities that have been through decades of disinvestment and neglect. Our service area includes the entire city of St. Louis County, and St. Clair County. And on the left side of this slide, there's some information about the backgrounds of our clients. Traditionally, over half of the clients that we serve are what we call justice involved, who other people may refer to as ex-offenders. Many of our clients are undereducated. Many of them did not finish high school. We serve individuals who are obviously unemployed or underemployed. A significant portion of our clients are receiving public assistance, be it TANF or SNAP, or perhaps they're living in subsidized housing. A significant portion of our clients, and this is unfortunately a growing portion of our clients, are currently unhoused. We also serve at-risk and high-risk individuals. Some of you may know that we were recently selected by the city of St. Louis to operate 2 new cure violence sites in the city of St. Louis as we combat the record number of homicides that unfortunately we experienced last year. We also serve a significant number of veterans, individuals who have been through significant negative experiences in their lives. We also serve individuals who have challenges with alcohol and other substances. And we serve a lot of males who do not have custody of their children or visitation rights as it may exist. On the right side are some statistics that may not surprise anybody in this session, but we know that African Americans are incarcerated 4 times more often than Caucasians in the state of Missouri. We know that at this time it costs at least $30,000 to the taxpayers of the great state of Missouri to keep an individual incarcerated on an annual basis. And of course, unfortunately, Black residents are 3 times more likely to live in areas of concentrated poverty. Sarah, we can go to the next slide. So what do we do to help our clients overcome these barriers? I'll start on the left side. Most of our clients we find are in a great need of soft skills and pre-employment training. As I mentioned earlier, a significant portion of our clients have been recently incarcerated, so they're returning back to the community. So of course, they were not in a position to be a part of the workforce. Another thing that we provide for our clients is financial empowerment for the same reasons that we provide the soft skills and kind of work readiness training program. We also find that a lot of our clients don't have a lot of tools to work with. And so we assist a significant portion of our clients to even get to our offices for the training that they receive. And once we train them, we find that many of them then need clothing to carry out their newly assigned tasks as new employees. We are best known in the community for our ability to recruit, vet, and train our clients to enter the workforce. We also provide in-house behavioral and mental health counseling. We find that a significant portion of our clients, because of their lived experiences, might want to work, but they are carrying things around with them that are preventing them from taking those next steps. We also provide a significant amount of housing assistance for our client, and this has grown exponentially during the COVID-19 pandemic. We provide eviction prevention assistance for a significant number of our clients. Eviction prevention meaning rental assistance, mortgage assistance, and utility assistance. Obviously, it'd be very difficult for us to train an individual and place them in the workforce if they were in a position where they could become unhoused. And we also provide rapid rehousing assistance for our clients who are unfortunately currently unhoused. And so all of our clients that go through the work readiness pre-employment training are then assigned a career specialist who is essentially a case manager. This individual becomes their advocate, their champion, their big brother, their big sister, their mentor, et cetera, and helps them along their journey to self-sufficiency. I find that a great deal of our success in working with our clients is because of the deep bond and credible relationship that is formed between the career specialist and the client that they are assigned to. We are also big on retention. We're not interested in placing our clients in temporary, part-time, dead-end positions. We work very hard to place them in career track positions where there are opportunities for advancement and growth. And so our career specialists work very hard to stay in close contact with our clients to see how they're doing. If they need any advice, if they need to be inspired, at times there may need to be some mediation between our client and some of their coworkers or their supervisor. So we're quick to not cut the cord on our clients once they enter the workforce. We want to stay in touch with them. We want to support them. If something happens where they lose employment, we always let them know that they can come back to us. We'll gather ourselves, we'll find out what lessons can be learned, and then we move forward. You can go on to the next one, Sarah. So as we talk about the ever expanding, growing industry of STEM, one of the things that we have found in working with many of our construction partners in the St. Louis region is that there are tons of opportunities available for the types of clients that we serve. One of the great things about the construction industry is that it has typically been a second chance friendly industry for individuals, meaning that it is a industry that is second chance friendly for individuals that have made a mistake, that have paid their debt to society, and now want to live different lives. And so recently we partnered with the City of St. Louis, the IBEW, Slate, Building Union Diversity, two privately owned solar panel companies. And we piloted a solar panel installation training program. And so the individuals that were recruited for this program completed our soft skills training. They then completed some hands-on training at the IBEW's training facility. And then several of them were then given 2-week internships with one of the privately owned solar panel companies that we partnered with on this program. You'll see in the top 2 pictures, this is one of the participants, one of the graduates from that initial set of participants. I'm very happy to say that he was recently hired by one of these solar panel installation companies, and I'm very excited to report that his starting salary in an entry-level position is just over $34,000 a year, and he has significant room for growth. And that bottom picture reflects some of the other individuals who participated in the program. We can go to the next one, Sarah. So just a little bit about kind of our impact in the community. Over the past 8 years, we've placed over 4,000 of our clients into the workforce. As of late last year, the average client wage was a little less than $11 million. And based on our data, we know that our clients then contributed over $11 million to the local economy. Why that is so important, if you remember the previous slide that talked about how much it costs the taxpayers of the state of Missouri to incarcerate an individual, which we now know is over $30,000 a year, we are doing our part to keep individuals out of incarceration and putting them in a position where they can make a positive contribution to the region. And on the right, the University of Missouri-Columbia a few years ago did an independent study. And if I can brag on my teammates here, out of 39 agencies that were studied, we had the lowest reoffense rate in the state. And again, I really have to attribute that to the career specialists who I mentioned earlier, who developed that deep, incredible bond and relationship with our clients, and also to our counselors and also to our housing specialists who provide the supportive services that are truly, truly important and are now even more important as individuals navigate through this COVID-19 pandemic. So with that, I will conclude my remarks and answer any questions if that's appropriate, Brian.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sal, for sharing all the great information that Employment Connection is doing. So we have time for a couple of quick questions. With the recent expansion of the Second Chance Pell, do you plan on leveraging this opportunity to serve your incarcerated clients?
Absolutely. It's really been an exciting time for us, Brian, over the past year. More and more industries, more and more employers have been reaching out to us to ask, how can we help them diversify their workforce? And so we're in a rather unique position right now in that we have more positions to fill than people to fill them with. And these are positions that have career growth opportunities. And so in many cases, we're having to convince our clients that things have changed somewhat, that you are valuable, that employers want people like you that have a positive work ethic, that want to make a positive contribution to the economy. And we're here to help you achieve your dreams in that regard.
And if we can, just one more quick question, do you see any potential for the coordination between the region's entrepreneurship, small business support ecosystem, and workforce programs like those delivered by Employment Connections?
Absolutely, I do. And hopefully no one will be offended by what I'm going to say, but a lot of our justice involved clients have been entrepreneurs. It's just that they were involved in illegal activity. And so if you can imagine, if you were trafficking in illegal drugs, you understand what it takes, or at least the concepts, to identify customers. You understand customer service, you understand supply and demand, you understand cost considerations. So for a lot of our clients, we're having to explain to them and reveal to them that you have a lot of the skills that are necessary to make that transition. We just have to get you refocused, repositioned to do things that are legal, that will put you in a position to be successful for the rest of your life.
Thank you so much, Sal. We're running a little bit behind schedule, so for those of you that still have questions, we'll try to get those answered. Our next presenter is Felicia Ford, president and founder of the Freddie Ford Family Foundation. Felicia will share about a population often left out of this conversation about inclusive workforce, people with disabilities. Felicia?
Hi, thank you so very much there, Brian. Just a little bit more about my foundation. We support underserved families impacted by autism, and we're working to raise awareness of autism spectrum disorders, and we're currently working on an employment readiness program for those with autism. So I'm just going to dive right in. So the workforce is changing and inclusion initiatives are becoming more commonplace, and more potential employees have disabilities. The growing number of people with disabilities needs to be recognized as we move forward in establishing new employment opportunities in the region. Our goal should be to be as inclusive as possible to all of our different communities. As you can see, the Americans with Disabilities Act requires certain employers to provide reasonable accommodations necessary for an employee to be able to perform job duties. And it prohibits discrimination in all aspects, on the basis of disability in all aspects of employment. So there are a few different types of disabilities. There's the physical disabilities, mental health disabilities, and intellectual or cognitive disabilities. Many times the focus regarding disabilities is just on the physical disabilities. The mental health and cognitive disabilities are the invisible ones that no one is talking about, and it is harder to make accommodations for. Examples of invisible disabilities includes autism, ADHD, bipolar disorder, depression, diabetes, and kidney failure, just to name a few. It is important to note that individuals with disabilities are willing and able to be assets to an employer if given the opportunity. The St. Louis 2030 Jobs Plan calls for the St. Louis community to make a commitment to work together in bold new ways to create more high quality job opportunities while acting with intention so that all residents have access to those opportunities. The plan intends to reduce racial disparities in income and wealth. It appears the initial draft did not take into account people with disabilities. However, the future drafts will be including disabilities, which is excellent. Failure to consider people with disabilities leaves our most vulnerable segment of the population unable to contribute to society and support themselves. Disparities in the Black community for those with disabilities is greater than any other group. Specifically, the invisible disabilities are less likely to be diagnosed and treated early, which affects the ability to obtain a quality education. Thus, many young Black children fall behind and ultimately drop out of school, which can lead to involvement in criminal activity. And after incarceration, they have difficulty obtaining employment because they now have a disability and a criminal background. There are also a number of people with disabilities working in low-paid jobs with little to no other opportunities. The impact of COVID layoffs have caused great concern for their return to employment as the market becomes more selective. Individuals with disabilities who have an education will fare better in the job market both pre and post-COVID. The type of jobs that those with education are qualified for will be more easily sustained as they manage their needs while working remotely. Syracuse University did a study on disabilities and the effects of COVID-19. Whereas most displaced workers without disabilities will be able to re-enter the labor market relatively quickly, this will not be the case for those with disabilities. Many will be unable to find a job and may become discouraged and will be forced to apply for government-related disability assistance, such as SSI, SSDI, Medicaid, and Medicare. The income and asset limits for these programs, however, make it nearly impossible for people with disabilities to get off and return to work, trapping them in a lifetime of poverty and economic disadvantage. Thus, the COVID-19 pandemic will leave a legacy of increased economic and labor market inequality among those with disabilities. So there are a number of barriers to employment that I want to highlight. Employees fear disclosing their disability, which under the ADA, they are not required to do so. Employees have an inability to request reasonable accommodations because the employer does not make it known how they can make the requests. One myth is that people with disabilities are incapable of performing their jobs. And another myth is that accommodations are expensive. And I will point out that there are tax incentives and grants tax breaks for those employers who are able to make or need assistance with accommodations. And finally, employers' businesses are not handicap accessible. So how can communities be more supportive? Well, education is critical to employment opportunities. Employment readiness programs, including interviewing skills, resume writing, education on workplace norms and expectations, and support for those who need assistance with self-advocacy. Employment training programs for technical skills for those with limited work experience and education, entrepreneurial assistance to support those who want to start a business and need support, and incentives for employers to receive training in disabilities and make a commitment to hire those with disabilities. And finally, employers need to have comprehensive employer assistance programs for mental illness and addiction concerns. So the actions that employers can take. Employers can designate an individual who can accept those specific accommodation requests and make it known. They can include language on their websites and on their job postings that they are accepting of people with all disabilities. They can ensure wheelchair accessible bathrooms and workspace can be more easily navigated for those with physical disabilities. They can allow potential employees to tour the office or workspace during the hiring process, so they may be more aware of what accommodations they may need to ask for. And employers can also explain clearly all job duties to ensure potential employees can consider their ability to perform the tasks involved in that position. Flexibility to work remotely for those with disabilities who can attend to their needs. And finally, employers can be proactive in making the workplace accommodations for those with physical disabilities, because at any time a current employee could become disabled and you want to be ready to support them as well. So final thoughts, there needs to be more support available to get individuals with disabilities in the workforce, and all individuals with disabilities deserve the chance to support themselves through gainful employment. There is much work to be done to be more inclusive of people with disabilities in light of COVID. St. Louis can be a leader in truly embracing and supporting the disabled community. We just need to include people with disabilities in the vision for a brighter St. Louis. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you so much, Felicia, for that great presentation. And I know we have time for a few quick questions. I'd like to start it off with the move to remote work. How can people with disabilities take advantage of this new move to remote work as an equalizer?
Well, the good thing about remote working is that if you have a disability that requires you to maybe take medication at a certain time, or you need to be able to move around and stretch your legs more, you can accommodate what your own special needs are more conveniently at home.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and we're running a little bit over time, but thank you so much for sharing your information. Thank you to Marcella, Dana, Sal, and Felicia for the great information that you've shared with us today. I'm going to turn it back over to Parag to close us out for today.
Thank you, Brian. And another big thank you to all of our speakers today. So look, we heard a little bit about some of the barriers that are excluding people from high quality jobs. And we also heard about some of the programs that are helping to make St. Louis's workforce more inclusive, from youth to adults. This is a complex issue. And as I said at the top of the program, it will take collaboration and intentionality from all sectors in order to solve it. And that's where our conversation will take us next. We hope you'll join us for part 2 of this event tomorrow to hear from other local voices who are working to create inclusive access to education, training, and technology in St. Louis. We will also share how you can do your part to implement change in the region. So if you haven't registered for day 2, there is still time. We will also be sending all of you a follow-up email with the recording of today's program. Please use the link in the chat to share quick feedback so we can continue to provide relevant and engaging events in the future. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you to all our speakers, and we'll see you tomorrow.